Welcome everybody. The purpose of this session today is to give you some idea on how do you tackle the UPSC civil services examination, both prelims and mains, as far as the history and culture segment is concerned. Okay, the history and culture segment becomes very important for us. As I have mentioned here, let us talk with four basic aspects here. One, how important is history and culture in UPSC prelims and mains? Friends, if we analyze the last 6-7 years papers, it is very clear that history and culture becomes a very important segment for you, which determines your success. For example, in the preliminary examination, from ancient and medieval culture and modern India, we might have the questions of about say 15 to 16 questions you might come, you might be able to answer there. That means out of 100 questions, 15 to 16% of the questions are from history and culture. And there is no defined pattern. Earlier people used to think that you will have more focus on modern India, national movement, ancient is less or medieval is less. But last year, if you see, the questions from medieval India are also equally important. They have given at least 4 to 5 questions from medieval India. So friends, I suggest you should have a uniform approach as far as ancient and medieval Indian culture and modern India is concerned, post-independent India is concerned for preliminary examination. Then another important aspect is the history segment is also important for the mains. In the general studies paper 1, that is after essay, we have again Indian history and culture. Then we do have modern India. We have post-independent India or India since independence. Apart from that, there is also world history in that. So, while for preliminary examination, you may not have to have any objective focus, but for the mains, you will have to have descriptive focus for world history. Then another important aspect is what is the number of marks that you are going to see from history segment in the mains examination general studies part. There has been wide variations. There were years when there were 60 to 70 marks came from history and culture segment, including world history in the mains, general studies mains. At the same time, before last year, in fact, UPSC surprised by not giving any question from world history also. Okay, so the point is, we will never be able to exactly predict whether there will be more questions or less questions. So the best way is to prepare for 60-70 marks in the mains from descriptive, ancient, medieval, culture, and of course modern India. And the next important aspect is world history. This is how you have to see. So here 15 to 16 marks in the preliminary general studies and about 40 to 50 marks in the GS paper out of the 250 question marks you have to minimum expect from history segment. Having said this, in the preliminary examination, unless and until 15% is able to be addressed by you properly, it's very difficult to ensure success. So friends, history and culture segment is very important for your success in the UPSC civil services examination. That is the first point we would like to make. The next important one is we have also covered a number of marks in the prelims and mains, about say 15 to 16 marks in prelims, okay, and you may expect about 40 to 50 marks in mains, okay. This is GS mains. This is what you can expect in the examination. So that should be determining your preparation level. Another interesting aspect for us is key areas of the syllabus. In ancient and medieval, you should focus more on cultural aspects while giving a broad framework approach to the political history also. Now, what do you mean by culture? Culture is simply way of life. So, in our way of life, what do you do from morning to evening? That becomes very, very important. You will have society, you will have social organization, you have things like Varna system or caste system, you have concepts like Varna and Jati, right? You have position of women, we have different social classes, their mobility or immobility, right? Then societal systems, norms, justice, all these things can come under the cultural aspect. Okay. At the same time, you will also have to study about art and architecture, literature, language, script. Some questions on economy is also sometimes important, especially in areas like, say post-Mauryan period when we have something called mercantile era. Some aspects about economy are also important. So what should you read? You should have a broad framework of political history. This is important because without political history basics, you would not be able to know what actually is the concept. For example, if you are talking about Ashoka's contribution to Buddhism or how Ashoka made Buddhism a global religion, you will also need to understand whether Ashoka belonged to which period, what was his contribution, what was his time frame, what was his dynasty, like that. So friends, I don't advocate a totally, touch me not approach to the political history. For every important dynasties, especially for Mauryans or later we have Guptas or subsequently Harshvardhan, Palas, Pratiharas and Rashtrakutas, Delhi Sultanate and Mughals, Marathas. I request you also to keep some basics in mind. Who is the founder of the dynasty? What is the broad area of time or period they were ruling and all that. Another important aspect here, the moment you talk about political history, many students are overtly worried. Should we remember all the dates and years, wars, battles, treaties and all that? Absolutely not. You can remember centuries or the broad period. For example, if you say, the Aurangzeb continued to rule up to the first decade of the 18th century. Aurangzeb died in 1707. If you have any specific problem with the year 1707, the death of Aurangzeb, you can simply remember that in the first decade of 18th century, up to first decade of the 18th century, Aurangzeb had ruled like that. So that is how you need to approach for ancient and medieval society. Broad, what are the areas? Broad political framework, then society. In society, you come across Varna system, classes, emergence of new castes, Varna and Jati, position of women, whether there was slavery or not, what are the rights of the Shudras, how they were exploited and all that. The notions of marginality and privilege in the society, like that. Then you also focus on basic aspects of economy. For example, up to from the Shatavahana period, we do have the rise of land grants, which had made a huge impact on society and economy. So the first urbanization in Indian history, which is Harappan civilization, is important to be remembered. Then of course Vedic, early Vedic and later Vedic are predominantly rural cultures. Second urbanization had happened in 6th century BC in Indian history, and after that we do have mercantilism from the 2nd century BC to 3rd century AD, the great period of growth in trade and commerce. Okay, and after that from the Guptas again we have the decentralization taking place mainly because of the practice of land grants. Then by 6th century, after the completion of 6th century, when Harsha was ruling in the 7th century AD, that means by 600, according to a very well-known historian called B.D. Chattopadhyaya, and of course others like R.S. Sharma and all others, Indian society and economy was moving towards what is generally been called feudalism, and we have more and more land grants impacting the social system, economy and as well as polity. From 1000 AD, again things were moving. This period of say from 600 to 1000 is almost a kind of land grant based feudal political and social system in India with its economic underpinnings. But From 1000 AD onwards, when Muhammad of Ghazni started invading India 17 times, Muhammad of Ghazni raided India. Invasion is by Muhammad of Ghori. Okay, the trade got revived from Central Asia and North India, and subsequently Cholas in the south also contributed to trade and commerce. Delhi Sultanate, we have a lot of factory production which are called Karkhanas. Vijayanagara focused a lot on trade and commerce. From 1498, we have European trading companies coming to India. So gradually economy picked up. So like this, you need to have a broad overview of economy also. And of course, then literature, language and literature right from the Harappan script. Okay, how language and literature had grown. Sangam literature has specially been mentioned. So all these are very, very important aspects to be remembered by you. Then apart from language, literature, names of the books and literary trends and styles, you should also remember the sources. Now, it's not only important to remember the names of the books and the authors, what the books speak. There was a question in the mains in the previous years that how Sangam literature helps us to understand the social and economic conditions or the nature of society and economy of the Tamilaham or Tamil country. Okay, so like that, how another question in GS is how Dharmasastras will help us to understand social customs and traditions in the Guptan period. You know, we have Manu Dharmasastra or Manav Dharmasastra, which was the first one, almost ready in the early centuries AD. Then by Guptan period onwards, we have Narada, Brihaspati, Kasyayana, then Apastamba, Yajna, Valkya. There are variety of Dharmasastras which regulated social conditions, society, norms and other customs. So, can we take Dharmasastras as something that give us indication to whether the position of women or whatever, the society or the untouchability, how untouchability originated, right? How caste system came up, why it was continuing in Indian history and society so far. All these are very thematic questions and very interesting concepts that you can understand and write. So it's not an easy job. That is how you just need to understand all these aspects. Okay. So then the next important aspect is we also need to understand that art and architecture, numismatics have also been important in the society. The most important aspect is that whether right from the Mesolithic age, when we have cave art of Bhimbetka, we need to study Harappan art and architecture, then the beginning of Mauryan art and architecture, which is Buddhist. Subsequently, how it continued, Gandhara, Madura, Amravati schools, there have been regular questions on art and architecture. Vijayanagara architecture, Chola architecture, Guptan temples activity, Pallavas and Chalukyas, art and architectural contributions, then Delhi Sultanate, Bahmani architecture, then regional styles in Delhi Sultanate such as Janpur, which is a Sharki kingdom of Janpur. We have Paudu architecture in Bengal, Chandela architecture of Bundelkhand, right? And Mount Abu Jain architecture. We have variety of things that are related to art and architecture. The regional styles also we'll have to see painting right from the Mughals. Apart from art and architecture, we have painting schools. Miniature art came up. After towards the end of the Mughal period, we have painting schools like Kangra school, Pahadi school. Then we have Dakkani Kalams, right? So we have Kulu school of painting. All these are very, very important in the culture. At the same time, regional dance forms are, regional styles, folk dances, folklore, traditional art forms of different states are very prominently asked in this area. That is what you have to read. And coming to modern India, friends, everything is important in modern India. We cannot absolutely make any choice. And modern India, national movement, the questions are more focused on peasant uprisings, national concerts, socio-religious reforms, left consciousness, rise of leftist ideology in India, trade union movement, and all that are very, very important to be understood. Whether 1857 revolt can be called as first war of Indian independence What are the factors that led to the rise of Indian nationalism? 1857 revolt and V.D. Savarkar's description has been in the news recently. Of course, now COVID has taken over all other aspects. Otherwise, we do have it, right? So, questions in history are also picked up from the current developments and current relations. They might ask something that is in the news. Tipu Sultan could be asked, what is his contribution? Like that. So, you have to be careful about modern India. And post-independent, I suggest after national movement anyway, we have to study extensively national movement. After that, in post-independent India, you divide into 3-4 aspects. One is the problems India immediately faced after partition, refugee issue, border issues, and the foreign policy issues, how India faced threat from Pakistan and China, and how we move towards non-aligned, and economic consolidation, which anyway you will also be reading under economy part of GS, where we do have the planning, beginning of the planning and the planned, the 5-year plan based model, the economic consolidation like that could also be asked. And international relations, how India's approach has been changing towards this. All these are important in the post-independent Indian segment also. World history, coming to world history, syllabus is very brief as far as UPSC's syllabus is concerned, given syllabus is concerned. It talks, about various events, important or significant events from the middle of the 18th century, which means that the industrial revolution. Okay, so industrial revolution, whether it is, how do you define whether it is an ongoing process or it is a sudden process? Then, why industrial revolution had originated first in England, what contributed for England to host the first industrial revolution in the world, the contribution of scientific innovations, spread of industrial revolution outside England, what are the economic, social, political, ideological consequences of industrial revolution. All this can be asked. Then ideologies. By middle of 19th century, we have socialism. In fact, socialism as a concept originated in the industrial revolution. There is something called, there was a British industrialist called Robert Owen, who had actually considered to be the father of something called utopian socialism. After that, we have Saint Simon Mont Blanc. These are the 3 people who spoke about utopian socialism. But Karl Marx, by the middle of the 19th century, came up with the publication of the Communist Manifesto and spoke about scientific socialism, which actually became communism. So what do you understand by utopian socialism? What is scientific socialism? How do you chronicle the growth of socialistic ideology in the world? And what led to the Russian Revolution in the process? And after Russian Revolution, is Marxism relevant today? Is Marxist theory relevant today? All this have to be studied. That is one very, very important aspect, friends. Then, of course, the nationalistic American War of Independence, then various angles related to it, American Constitution, American Civil War, French Revolution, various aspects, contribution of intellectuals like Rousseau to French Revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte. Can we say Napoleon is the child of French Revolution? Okay, what is Napoleon's continental policy? Vienna Conference of 1815. Then after that, rise of nationalism, which was reflected in the unification movements in Italy and Germany. By 1870s, Italy and Germany unifications got completed. So from 1870s, we see the transformation of nationalism into aggressive nationalism, which led to imperialism, and this led to the First World War. Okay, and of course, after that, in the interwar period also, you will have to see rise of dictatorships, fascism and Nazism, Turkey modernization under Mustafa Kemal Pasha, then how economic depression of 1929 and 30, then how it led to the Second World War, post Second World scenario, whether it is Cold War or United Nations, then end of USSR. Do you think end of USSR is failure of Marxism? Then end of Cold War, unipolar world, decolonization. All these are very conceptual aspects. So friends, the task is huge. It's not that you take history light. If you want success, you have to study very carefully. And now coming to the books, there are not many books which you can refer. As far as my classes are concerned, I teach from almost 23 books which are also regularly updated. Apart from using information like journals like Indian Historical Review, Indian Economic and Social History Review, Studies in History, which is published by JNU, a Journal of Peasant Studies, then History Today. These will be tough for you, but anyway, as you will be attending classes, I suggest coaching is good for civil services. Not that we get money, but it gives you some broad idea on a way to start and how to do and how to go about it. So you can safely read my notes, or you can also read these books. For example, whether it is Indian history by Rai Chaudhary, then Tapan Rai, Majumdar, Rai Chaudhary, and Chopra, which is actually called Three Others book. Early India by Rovilla Dapar, Wonder That Was India by A.L. Basham, Volume 1, Wonder That Was India, Volume 2 by Rizvi, Essays in Cultural History of India by A.L. Basham, Perspectives in Social and Economic History by R.S. Sharma, Aspects of Political Ideas, Ideals and Institutions in Ancient India by R.S. Sharma, The Gupta and Vakataka Age by R.C. Mazumdar, okay, and Ancient Indian Historical Outline by D.N. Jha. Of course, apart from NCERT books, whether it is ancient, medieval or modern, you should read old NCERTs by R.S. Sharma, Satish Chandra and Bipin Chandra, along with the NCERTs that have also come up recently. Then coming to medieval, Sunil Kumar has written a very good book on Delhi Sultanate. I have a PhD in history and I do contribute to research and also write a lot of articles in journals. I have traveled widely. I participated in international seminars. I do present papers. So what I can get you is the best of things for general studies as well as optional. We also offer history optional actually, so if you're interested, you can get in touch with us. So this is how we actually see the list of books you need to study. Modern India, apart from NCERTs, both old and new, you also read you read Grover for Modern India, then Modern India by Sumit Sarkar, okay, and India's Struggle for Independence by Bipin Chandra, India Since Independence by Bipin Chandra, Makers of Modern India by Ramchandra Guha, okay, then you can also read for old history, you read L. Mukherjee, which is the book was written even I was born. Even I could be born before me, but it's a very, very interesting book, very simple book, especially if your language skills are not good. If you are comfortable with English language, you read Kettleby, World History, European History, then you read C.J.H. Hayes, then you read Norman Lowy, okay, and you can also read some articles and journals if you are in the universities and have access to it. Now, what is important? What is important is not how many. It's not that you need to read 100 books. As a teacher, I read a variety of books and teach from multiple sources. But as a student, whatever you read, even I safely promise you, friends, if you read my notes, it's very clear. I write on the boards. I will also give you some slides and whatever. If you read my notes, it is enough. Okay. If you listen to class and take some points, also it is enough. Obviously, the most interesting aspect you have to study is get clarity on concepts. Be very clear on basics. After reading or listening to a topic, you should ask me or you should ask yourself or any other teacher how this is going to come in the examination. 1 hour class, how can you convert into 10 minutes answer? That becomes. And after that, explore n number of possibilities how question can come on a particular aspect after reading and writing. Put it on the paper, then get it corrected. Unless you do this kind of massive exercise, it is very difficult that you will be able to present in the examination easily. Friends, if you do it like this in say about 4 to 5 months it takes, I am sure you will get maximum marks in history. Absolutely nobody can stop you. If you have a concept of clarity, give the best material and do the writing practice. Think n number of possibilities how questions can come so that there will be no surprise for you in the golden hours of examination time after you reach the examination. Okay, so the point is for prelims and mains, this is going to be very, very important area for you. Whether you love or hate history, history cannot be neglected for your success in the examination. And we are always available to clarify any of your doubts or whatever. You can get to our contacts which are already given, so you can get back to us. Okay, so thanks, friends. Let's make history very attractive and important and useful to you. and please do follow these sessions. That will help you greatly. Okay, good luck.